From above, Millfield looks like any small American town church spires. A main street dotted with flags, neighborhoods where kids once rode bikes until sunset. For 17 years this town held its breath, hoping 5 empty bedroom doorways would somehow be filled again. The Spring Recital of 2006 was supposed to end with bow-tied bouquets and proud parents. Instead, it became the night that divided time before 5 tutus vanished into thin air and the broken after. No bodies. No suspects. No closure. Until last November, when Mike Reed's hunting trip led him deep into Claxton Forest, where tree roots strangled the remains of a station wagon. What he found inside wouldn't just solve a mystery. It would tear open wounds everyone thought had finally scarred over. Before we begin, I'm curious, where are you watching from right now, and what time is it there? Drop it in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel because every view helps these stories reach more people. The town of Millfield sat nestled between rolling hills and sprawling farmland, the kind of place where 4th of July parades still mattered and people left their doors unlocked at night. Main Street boasted a clock tower that chimed every hour, its sound carrying across neighborhoods where everyone knew not just your name, but your grandparents' names too. At Millfield Elementary, the annual Spring Recital wasn't just another school event, it was a tradition that packed the gymnasium with proud families clutching bouquets and video cameras. The 2006 recital was particularly special because of 5 exceptional dancers who had trained together since kindergarten. Emma Wilson, with her sunshine blonde hair and gap-toothed smile, drove her mother crazy practicing pirouettes in the kitchen. Olivia Scott, serious and precise, corrected the other girls' postures during recess. Sophia Martinez twirled faster than anyone, her dark eyes lighting up on stage. Mia Johnson, the tallest of the group, moved with a grace that belied her usual playground clumsiness. Grace Taylor, the youngest by months, was the daring one, always wanting to try the most difficult steps. These girls shared more than dance lessons. They shared secrets, sleepovers, and dreams scribbled in matching journals with butterfly locks. Their mothers traded carpool duties and sewed costumes late into the night. Their friendship sometimes strained by the subtle competition over whose daughter would earn the center spot. Their dance instructor, Richard Davis, had arrived in Millfield 3 years earlier and transformed the school's basic dance program into something remarkable. In his mid-40s, with salt and pepper hair always neatly combed, he carried himself with the posture of the professional dancer he'd once been in Chicago. Parents appreciated his discipline and dedication. School administrators praised how he'd put their little town on the map at regional competitions. "He's a gift to this community," Principal Thompson often said, beaming at the trophies accumulating in the school's display case. Nobody questioned why Davis took such special interest in certain students, spending extra time adjusting their ribbons or keeping them after practice. Nobody thought twice about the way he photographed the girls for posture analysis. His perfectionism seemed like professionalism, his strictness merely high standards. The morning of May 15, 2006 dawned bright and clear. The 5 girls arrived early at school, vibrating with excitement, their costumes wrapped in plastic. Their mothers helped with makeup and hair, fussing over every detail. That evening, under the spotlights, they danced beautifully in tutus that sparkled pink, blue, lavender, magenta, and green. The audience erupted in applause. Camera flashes captured their triumphant smiles. No one knew these images would soon plaster missing persons posters across 3 states. The recital ended at 8:45 p.m. with a standing ovation. Parents crowded near the stage door, arms full of flowers, cameras still hanging around their necks. The gymnasium buzzed with chatter as families slowly filtered toward the exits. Outside, the spring evening had turned cool, with a thin mist rolling in from the fields. Julia Wilson checked her watch again, wondering what was taking Emma so long to change. Most of the other children had already emerged from the dressing rooms, but there was still no sign of the five-star dancers. "Has anyone seen the girls?" she asked, catching Rebecca Johnson's eye. The two mothers had been avoiding each other since their argument over costume designs last month. Rebecca shrugged. "Probably still getting compliments from everyone. You know how Mia soaks it up?" By 9:15, the crowd had thinned significantly. Principal Thompson was helping the janitor stack chairs when Julia approached, concern tightening her features. "They're probably still with Mr. Davis," Thompson assured her. "He always does a little post-performance review with his top students." But when Thompson knocked on the classroom Davis used for dance instruction, it was empty. The girls' backpacks sat in a neat row against the wall, but the room was silent. By 9:30, the five mothers had formed an anxious cluster by the school's main entrance. The last families were driving away, headlights cutting through the thickening fog. Principal Thompson returned from checking the bathrooms, her professional calm beginning to crack. "I tried calling Richard's cell, but it's going straight to voicemail," she said. That's when the night custodian approached, keys jingling at his hip. "If you're looking for Mr. Davis and those dancers, I saw them getting into his station wagon about 20 minutes ago. He had all their costumes in garment bags." The temperature in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. Why would he take our daughters anywhere without permission? Sophia's mother demanded, her accent thickening with fear. "He mentioned something about a special celebration dinner for their performance," the custodian replied. Julia Wilson's hands began to shake. "No, we didn't know anything about that." By 10:15 p.m., all five families had called their daughters' friends, neighbors, relatives, anyone who might have heard something. By 11 o'clock, they had called the police. By midnight, Officer Thomas Foster was taking statements in the same gymnasium where the girls had danced just hours earlier. "Richard Davis has always been completely professional," Principal Thompson insisted, though doubt had begun to cloud her eyes. This must be some misunderstanding. The parents didn't sleep that night. They gathered in the Wilson living room, making calls, checking phones for messages that never came. The police drove through town, spotlight beams sweeping across parks and parking lots. Nobody could reach Davis. His apartment phone rang unanswered. Dawn broke with no sign of the girls or their teacher. By noon the next day, the first news van arrived. By evening, there were 5. The story of the missing dancers spread quickly. 5 beautiful girls in bright tutus vanished after their moment of triumph. Officer Foster stood in Davis's empty apartment, taking in the sparse furniture, the bare walls, the disturbing absence of personal touches. The place looked barely lived in. Something about this didn't feel like a spontaneous decision. In the bedroom closet, he found gaps where clothes had been removed. In the bathroom, the toothbrush was gone. In the kitchen, the refrigerator held nothing perishable. Richard Davis hadn't just taken 5 girls, he had planned to disappear. Foster picked up his radio. "I need an APB on Richard Davis and his vehicle, and I need his background checked across all databases." He stared out the window at the search teams already forming in the street below. "Something tells me he's not who he says he is." Across town, 5 bedrooms sat undisturbed, tutus from previous recitals still hanging on closet doors, waiting for dancers who wouldn't return. By the 3rd day, Millfield had transformed. The sleepy town now hummed with grim purpose as FBI agents set up command in the community center, maps covering the walls, phones ringing constantly. Search parties combed every inch of the county, abandoned buildings, wooded areas, the lake shore. Helicopters chopped overhead while tracking dogs sniffed school uniforms for familiar scents. The first breakthrough came when Davis's station wagon appeared on security footage from a gas station 30 miles north of town, timestamp 10:22 p.m. on recital night. The grainy image showed him pumping gas, his face partially hidden by a baseball cap. The 5 girls were not visible. "They must be in the car." Agent Lawson told the gathered parents, her voice careful, measured. The attendant didn't report anything unusual. That means nothing, Julia Wilson snapped, dark circles beneath her eyes. Who looks inside cars at a gas station? They could have been terrified, maybe unconscious. Her voice broke. Nobody finished her thought. The second breakthrough hit like a thunderbolt. Richard Davis wasn't Richard Davis. Fingerprints from his apartment matched those of Robert Davidson, a dance instructor who'd left Pittsburgh 3 years earlier, amid rumors of inappropriate conduct with students. No charges had ever been filed. Parents had been reluctant to put their daughters through investigations, and the dance studio had quietly let him go with a neutral reference. How did nobody check his background? Rebecca Johnson screamed at the school board meeting, which had become a public inquisition. You handed our daughters to a predator. Principal Thompson aged years in days. Her confidence shattered. His references were impeccable. He had teaching certificates. We followed every protocol. Officer Foster, who hadn't slept more than 3 hours at a stretch since the disappearance, uncovered how Davidson Davis had crafted his new identity, paying cash for credentials, using a deceased man's social security number, carefully building the perfect small-town persona. The station wagon was spotted again at a motel near the state line, but by the time authorities arrived, the room was empty. A housekeeper reported seeing a man matching Davis's description, but no girls. He could be keeping them somewhere else, Agent Lawson theorized. Or he could have already. Again, nobody finished the thought. As days turned to weeks, the search widened, then gradually focused on the vast northern forests. A hiker reported seeing a station wagon on an unpaved fire road leading deep into Claxton Forest, an area of nearly 200 square miles of dense woodland. Search teams combed the accessible areas, but the forest was too vast, with too many hidden places. The first month passed. Then the second. Missing posters faded in shop windows. The FBI presence dwindled as other cases demanded attention. National media moved on to newer tragedies. Officer Foster refused to let the case go cold. Every weekend he would take his son Michael into different sections of the forest, searching places others hadn't reached. This is how we help people who need us most, he told the boy, who watched his father mark areas on maps each Sunday night, preparing for the next search. 6 months after the disappearance, a deer hunter found a child's pink hair ribbon caught on a branch near the eastern edge of Claxton Forest. DNA tests confirmed it belonged to Emma Wilson. Renewed search efforts concentrated there, but yielded nothing more. The community fractured along new fault lines, those who believed the girls must be dead, and those who clung to hope, those who blamed the school and those who blamed the parents for not being more vigilant, those who moved forward and those who couldn't. Julia Wilson refused to leave her house, turning Emma's bedroom into a shrine. Rebecca Johnson became a fierce advocate for missing children, channeling her grief into action. The other mothers coped in their own ways. Therapy, religion, relocation. 1 year passed, the FBI officially classified it as a cold case. Officer Foster was ordered to stop using department resources on his increasingly obsessive searches. You have to let it go, Tom, his captain said. You're destroying yourself for answers that might never come. But how do you stop looking for 5 little girls in bright tutus who vanished into thin air? 5 years later, Robert Davidson's Richard Davis was legally declared dead, though no body had been found. The families refused to hold memorial services. Without bodies, there can be no funerals. Julia Wilson told the town newspaper in her only interview, "Without proof, my daughter is missing, not dead." 10 years later, Officer Foster retired, his health broken by the strain of the unsolved case. He passed his maps and case notes to his son, Michael, now grown and working as a forest ranger. "I'm sorry I couldn't bring them home," Foster told the families at his retirement gathering. 17 years passed. Millfield's Spring Recital continued each year, though dance instruction was now always conducted with multiple adults present. The case faded into local legend, a cautionary tale parents told teenagers about trusting too easily. The families never stopped waiting for answers that seemed destined never to come. Until last November, when Michael Reed ventured deeper into Claxton Forest than anyone had searched before. The morning of November 12, 2023, arrived with the first real cold snap of the season. Frost clung to fallen leaves, and Michael Reed's breath formed clouds as he trudged through Claxton Forest, tracking a wounded 8-point buck. At 33, Michael had his father's determined jaw and observant eyes, though he'd chosen forest management over law enforcement. His decision to follow the buck deeper into the forest's northwestern quadrant, an area so remote it barely saw human traffic, was hardly remarkable. Just another hunter, on just another crisp autumn morning. Yet this ordinary choice would finally answer a question that had haunted his hometown for 17 years. Michael checked his GPS. He'd wandered nearly 12 miles from the nearest access road into terrain so rugged most hunters avoided it. The buck's blood trail was fading, but his tracker's instinct pushed him forward, over a ridge and down into a shadowed hollow where thick pines blocked much of the morning light. That's when he saw it, something unnatural among the trees, something that didn't belong. At first, it was just a shape, darker than the surrounding forest. As he approached, details emerged. Metal, once silver, now rust brown. A vehicle with its front end driven into a steep embankment, rear wheels sunk into decades of accumulated soil. Tree roots had breached the windows and wrapped around the chassis like hungry fingers, nature reclaiming what humans had abandoned. Michael's hunting instincts shifted to investigation mode, memories of his father's obsession flooding back. He approached cautiously, heart thundering in his chest. Years of forest growth had nearly consumed the station wagon. The license plate was missing, but Michael knew with absolute certainty what he'd found. Using his hunting knife, he cleared vines from the driver's side window. The interior was a time capsule of decay, rotted upholstery, a steering wheel colonized by fungus, and a dashboard where tree roots had pushed through the plastic like alien tentacles. The front seat was empty, but something in the back caught his eye. Fabric, once bright, now faded and mildewed, peeked from beneath a tangle of roots and debris. With trembling fingers, Michael worked his phone free and called 911. "This is Michael Reed," he said, voice steady despite his racing pulse. "I need to report a found vehicle in Claxton Forest, approximately 12 miles northwest of Ranger Station 4. I believe it's connected to the missing dancers case from 2006. The dispatcher's momentary silence spoke volumes. "Stay where you are, Mr. Reed. Do not touch anything further. Help is on the way." Michael ended the call and sank onto a fallen log, staring at the station wagon that had consumed his father's career and health. Now he understood why searches had failed. This section of forest was nearly inaccessible, requiring hours of difficult hiking. Davis had driven as far as possible before the terrain became impassable, then continued on foot with his victims. The question was, where had they gone from here? It took authorities 4 hours to reach the site. By nightfall, the hollow blazed with portable lights as forensic technicians documented everything. State police established a perimeter while search dogs worked outward from the vehicle. Michael watched from beyond the crime scene tape, answering questions about his discovery. Inside the station wagon, investigators found 5 deteriorated ballet costumes, pink, blue, lavender, magenta, and green, still on hangers, still in plastic garment bags. Beneath the rear seat, protected from the worst of the elements, they discovered a metal lockbox. By midnight, the town of Millfield was buzzing with the news. The 5 families, now scattered across different states, received phone calls they'd both dreaded and desperately wanted for 17 years. "They've found the car," Julia Wilson whispered to her husband, her hands clutching the phone so tightly her knuckles whitened. "They've found something that might tell us what happened to our baby." The metal box was transported to the state crime lab, opened under controlled conditions the next morning. Inside, they found items preserved from moisture and time, a journal with water-damaged but legible pages, a digital camera in a waterproof case, a stack of printed photographs from the recital, 5 student files with Davis's handwritten notes on each girl's progress and potential. The journal entries began 3 years before the abduction, detailing Davis's arrival in Millfield and his methodical grooming of the community's trust. The early pages showed a calculating predator. These small towns are perfect. They're so desperate for cultural opportunities, they'll welcome anyone with credentials, real or invented. The background check was a joke. These people want to believe in the good of others. It makes them blind. Later entries focused increasingly on the 5 girls. Emma shows the most natural talent but lacks discipline. Sophia responds well to firm correction. Olivia is too analytical. She watches me when she thinks I'm not looking. Maya tries too hard to please everyone. Grace questions authority, a problem I'll need to address. The final entries reveal Davis's deteriorating mental state. They're corrupting my dancers with their mediocre expectations and participation trophies. These girls could be perfect if everyone would stop interfering. I'm the only one who sees their true potential. The only one who can preserve their grace before the world ruins it. The recital night entry chilled investigators to the bone. Tonight I take them somewhere their true artistry can flourish without distraction. I've prepared everything at the cabin. We'll stay until they understand real discipline, real dedication. They'll thank me someday for saving them from becoming ordinary. The digital camera contained dozens of photos, the recital performance, the girls getting into Davis's car smiling, unsuspecting, and then increasingly disturbing images as they drove into the forest. The final photos showed the girls looking frightened, huddled together in the back seat as darkness and trees pressed against the windows. Officer Foster, now retired and frail at 68, arrived at the command center established at Ranger Station 4. Despite his medical conditions, he insisted on joining the investigation he'd never truly abandoned. "The journal mentions a cabin," he told the search coordinator, jabbing a gnarled finger at a topographical map. "There were rumors of an old hunting lodge in this area, abandoned in the 90s. We searched there in 2006, but found nothing." The search teams expanded their radius from the car, using ground-penetrating radar where possible and cadaver dogs throughout. On the 3rd day, approximately 1 mile from the abandoned vehicle, they found what remained of a small, dilapidated cabin, now little more than a stone foundation and rotted timber. And there they began to uncover the truth. 5 shallow depressions in the earth near the cabin foundation. 5 distinct areas where the soil composition differed from the surrounding forest floor. The forensic anthropologist called it, "These are graves, but they've been disturbed by animals, roots, time." The search for human remains began with somber efficiency. Fragments of bone were carefully collected, samples taken for DNA analysis. Personal effects emerged from the soil. A ballet slipper charm bracelet identified as Mia's, the butterfly hair clip Sophia wore at the recital, a small notebook with Emma's name inside the cover, pages filled with the child's handwriting. "Where's Davis?" Michael asked his father as they watched from a distance. "Shouldn't there be a 6th grave?" The question lingered as teams expanded their search. The answer came 2 days later when remains were discovered nearly half a mile from the cabin site, a skeleton with a shattered ankle, found at the bottom of a steep ravine. Dental records would later confirm it was Richard Davis, Robert Davidson. As forensic specialists pieced together the evidence, a heartbreaking narrative began to emerge. The girls had been taken to the remote cabin. At some point, they had attempted to escape. Davis had pursued them into the dark forest, fallen and severely injured himself. Unable to return to the vehicle or find help, he had eventually succumbed to his injury and exposure. But what had happened to the 5 dancers after their escape attempt? Why hadn't they reached safety? The forest held its secrets tight as investigators worked to uncover the final chapter of a 17-year-old tragedy. Throughout the investigation, Michael returned to the site daily, drawn by something he couldn't explain, perhaps the need to complete his father's unfinished mission. Perhaps the weight of all those years growing up in a town defined by this mystery. "Dad spent his life looking for them," he told Agent Lawson one evening as light faded over the search area. "He always said there was something we were all missing." "Your father was right," Lawson replied, studying the terrain with experienced eyes. "And I think what we're missing might still be out there." The next morning, Michael arrived before dawn with a new determination. Instead of joining the official search teams, he hiked to the ridge above the cabin site and surveyed the landscape from above, trying to see through 17 years of forest growth to the night 5 frightened girls fled from their captor. "They wouldn't have gone uphill," he murmured to himself. "Not in the dark, not in ballet slippers. They would have gone downhill, following the path of least resistance." With this new perspective, Michael began his own search, following the natural contours of the land downward from the cabin site, away from the areas already thoroughly examined. 3 hours later, his persistence was rewarded when he spotted something unnatural among the leaf litter, a small metal object reflecting the morning sun. It was a video camera, its casing deteriorated but intact enough to protect its contents. The battery was long dead, the exterior caked with years of grime, but the memory card compartment had remained sealed. Michael radioed his discovery, then sat beside it, standing guard until investigators arrived. He wondered what final secrets this small device might hold, and whether his father would finally find peace in those answers. The town of Millfield held its collective breath as experts worked to extract the data, the last missing piece in a puzzle 17 years in the making. The State Crime Lab's digital forensics team worked through the night to recover data from the memory card. Technicians huddled around monitors, voices hushed as corrupted files were painstakingly reconstructed. By morning, they had succeeded in retrieving video footage, the final testimony of 5 young dancers and their abductor. In a conference room at the Millfield Police Department, the 5 families gathered to view the recovered footage. Though divorced for 12 years, Julia and David Wilson sat shoulder to shoulder, their hands clasped so tightly their fingers turned white. Rebecca Johnson arrived with a victim's advocate, her face a mask of composure that had taken years to perfect. The other parents entered quietly, aged beyond their years, carrying photographs of daughters frozen forever at ages 10 and 11. Detective Sarah Winters, who had inherited the case from Officer Foster, addressed them with gentle frankness. "What you're about to see is difficult. We've reviewed the footage and believe it provides crucial answers about what happened to your daughters. You can stop the viewing at any point, and we have counselors available." On the screen, the image flickered to life. The interior of Davis's station wagon, camera apparently mounted on the dashboard. The timestamp showed 9:05 p.m., May 15, 2006, just 20 minutes after the recital ended. Davis's voice came through clearly. "My special dancers, tonight was just the beginning of your journey to greatness. We're going somewhere magical for a celebration dinner." The camera angle showed the girls in the back seat, still in their recital makeup, their expressions transitioning from excitement to confusion as the urban landscape gave way to countryside, then to forest roads. "Mr. Davis, my mom is waiting for me," Emma said, her voice small. "She doesn't know where I am. I called all your parents." Davis lied smoothly. "They know you're with me. This is a reward for your hard work." In the conference room, Julia Wilson made a strangled sound. As the footage continued, The girl's confusion turned to fear. The timestamp jumped ahead. 9:47 p.m., and the vehicle was deep in the forest, bouncing along an unpaved road in darkness broken only by headlights.
"I want to go home,"
Sophia cried. "Please, Mr. Davis. I don't feel good." "You'll all feel better when we reach our destination," Davis replied, his tone hardening. "Stop the whining." True dancers push through discomfort. The video jumped again, 10:32 p.m., showing the car stopped, engine off. Davis turned the camera to face himself, his expression eerily calm. "We've arrived at our new studio. The girls are upset now, but they'll understand eventually. This is for their own good, away from distractions, away from parents who don't appreciate their potential. I'll document their transformation into the perfect ensemble." The footage cut to the cabin interior, a Spartan space with bare wooden walls, a wood stove, and 5 thin mattresses arranged in a row. The girls huddled together on one mattress, still in their recital clothes, tears streaking their stage makeup. "Day 1 begins now," Davis announced, panning across their frightened faces. "From this moment, you exist only for dance. Everything else is a distraction." As the video continued, Detective Winters provided context based on the investigation. The cabin was an abandoned hunting lodge about a mile from where the car was found. Davis had apparently been preparing it for some time before the abduction. The footage showed Davis instructing the girls through dance routines, becoming increasingly agitated when they made mistakes or cried for their parents. He controlled their food, their sleep, even their bathroom breaks, all while documenting their progress with the camera. On what Davis labeled Day 3, the footage showed him sleeping on a cot near the door, keys visible in his pocket. The camera had been left running, apparently forgotten in his exhaustion. Then came the moment that brought the room to complete silence. Emma Wilson carefully slipping from her mattress, motioning the others to follow. The 5 girls, moving with the grace that had made them star dancers, crept across the cabin floor. Emma slowly extracted the keys from Davis's pocket, her hand trembling visibly. Olivia eased the cabin door open. One by one, they slipped outside into darkness. The camera, still recording, captured only an empty cabin and Davis's rhythmic breathing for nearly 20 minutes, before he suddenly jerked awake, realizing the girls were gone. "No," he shouted, scrambling to his feet. "No, no, no." He grabbed a flashlight and rushed outside, leaving the camera running. For almost an hour, the footage showed only the empty cabin. Then Davis reappeared, limping severely, his pants torn and bloodied. "They're running from their destiny," he ranted to the camera, eyes wild. "They'll come back when they realize how cold it is, how dangerous. They need me." He dragged a chair to the door, clearly intending to wait for their return, but pain eventually overcame him. The footage showed him struggling to bandage his leg, his movements growing weaker as blood soaked through the makeshift dressing. "Broke my ankle," he muttered. "Maybe worse? Need help?" He attempted to rise, but collapsed. The final segments showed Davis slipping in and out of consciousness, his ramblings becoming incoherent as infection and blood loss took their toll. Eventually, he crawled outside, apparently attempting to find help or pursue the girls again. The camera continued recording until its battery died, capturing only the empty cabin, a monument to a madman's obsession and 5 children's terror. When the screen went dark, the conference room remained silent, the only sound Rebecca Johnson's quiet weeping. Detective Winters spoke softly. "Based on forensic evidence and this footage, we believe Davis suffered a compound fracture while pursuing the girls. He returned to the cabin but eventually left again, perhaps delirious from infection. His remains were found in a ravine approximately half a mile away." "But what happened to our daughters?" David Wilson asked, his voice cracking. "If they escaped him, why didn't they find help?" The answer came from Michael Reed, who had been invited to the viewing due to his crucial role in discovering the evidence. He stepped forward, the weight of his father's obsession and his own recent discoveries evident in his bearing. The cabin was over 12 miles from the nearest paved road in one of the most remote sections of Claxton Forest. Even experienced hikers would struggle to navigate out, especially at night. He paused, struggling with the weight of what he needed to say. The girls had no supplies, no warm clothing. It was unusually cold that May temperatures dropped into the low 40s that night. The grim reality settled over the room. 5 young girls, dressed in thin recital clothes, lost in a vast cold forest. No food, no water, no way to know which direction might lead to safety. We believe they stayed together. Detective Winters continued gently. The evidence from the gravesite suggests they found shelter together under a rock outcropping about a mile from the cabin. Her professional demeanor faltered momentarily. They likely succumbed to hypothermia. They died huddled together for warmth, Rebecca Johnson said flatly, a mother's intuition crystallizing the scene, trying to keep each other safe. Yes, Detective Winters confirmed. Evidence suggests they survived at least 1 night, possibly 2. They were found within feet of each other. Julia Wilson stood abruptly. I need to know, did they suffer? Dr. Marsh, the medical examiner, stepped forward. Hypothermia is one of the more merciful ways to pass. They would have felt cold, then drowsy. They likely fell asleep together and simply didn't wake up. The room absorbed this information in heavy silence, grief mingling with the strange relief of finally knowing. But there was one more revelation to come. The next morning, forensic investigators made a discovery that transformed their understanding of the tragedy's final hours. While processing soil samples from the area where the girls' remains were found, a technician noticed something embedded in the hardened mud, a small heart-shaped locket. Inside was a school photograph of Emma Wilson and a handwritten note. Best friends forever. More significant than the locket itself was where it was found, in a distinct layer of soil that indicated it had been deliberately buried, not simply dropped. This prompted investigators to re-examine the entire site with painstaking precision. What they uncovered changed the narrative entirely. The girls hadn't simply huddled together and succumbed to the elements. They had been actively trying to survive. Around the rock outcropping where they sought shelter, investigators found evidence of primitive attempts to create safety. Stones arranged in a circle for a never-lit fire, broken branches positioned as rudimentary windbreaks, and most telling of all, a series of markers, bright pieces of recital costume fabric tied to branches, leading away from the shelter in a specific direction. They were creating a trail, Michael explained to the families gathered at the site, using pieces of their costumes to mark a path through the woods. Dr. Meredith Adams, a survival expert brought in to analyze the evidence, walked the assembled group through her findings. These girls were remarkably resourceful. The fabric markers suggest they were attempting systematic exploration, venturing out from their shelter and marking their way back. They were actively trying to find help, not simply waiting to be rescued. Julia Wilson stared at a faded piece of pink tulle, still clinging to a branch after 17 years. My Emma always said she wanted to be an explorer. The most heartbreaking discovery came when ground-penetrating radar revealed a small, carefully dug hole beneath the rock outcropping. Inside, preserved in the dry pocket beneath the stone, was a waterproof plastic bag containing 5 handwritten notes, final messages from each girl to her family. These weren't discovered with their remains because the girls had deliberately hidden them, seemingly aware that they might not survive, but determined their final words would someday be found. Emma's note read, "Dear Mom and Dad, we are lost, but we are together. Mr. Davis fell down and hurt his leg when he was chasing us. We ran away from the cabin, but now we don't know where we are. It's very cold. Olivia says we need to stay by these rocks until morning. I'm scared, but I'm trying to be brave like you taught me. I love you forever and ever." Each note revealed something of the girls' characters. Olivia's contained precise details about their location and situation. Sophia's expressed faith that they would be found. Mia's focused on comforting her parents. Grace's showed determination to keep everyone's spirits up. The discovery of these messages initiated a fresh forensic investigation of the entire area. Using advanced technology unavailable 17 years earlier, investigators found more evidence of the girls' struggle to survive. Fingerprints on tree bark where they'd checked for moss to determine direction, stones arranged to catch rainwater, even remnants of berries they had gathered, some still clutched in Sophia's remains. Most significant was the discovery that the fabric trail markers extended nearly 3/4 of a mile from their shelter, leading toward what would have been safety. The final marker, a piece of Grace's green tutu, was found tied to a branch pointing toward a fire road less than a mile away. They had been systematically working their way toward potential rescue, marking their progress carefully. "They almost made it," Officer Foster whispered, leaning heavily on his cane as he surveyed the path the dancers had tried to create. "If they'd had just one more day of strength." The medical examiner confirmed what the evidence suggested: the girls had survived for approximately 3 days in the forest. They had died not from exposure on the first night, as initially believed, but from a combination of hypothermia, dehydration, and exhaustion after days of attempting to find their way out. Their story wasn't one of passive victims but of extraordinary courage. When the final forensic report was completed, Detective Winters gathered the families once more. "There's something else you should know," she said, her professional demeanor softening. "Based on the position of the remains and the evidence at the scene, we believe the girls formed a circle when they realized they couldn't go on, holding hands until the end. Even in their final moments, they were supporting each other." Rebecca Johnson, who had maintained her composure through most of the investigation, finally broke down. "They were brave," she sobbed. "So much braver than anyone could expect children to be." For the parents who had spent 17 years imagining the worst, this new understanding of their daughter's final days offered a different kind of closure, not less painful, but tinged with pride in the courage their children had shown. Yet one mystery remained. Among the evidence recovered from the cabin site was a weathered backpack containing a small digital video recorder. The battery was dead, the exterior damaged, but the memory card remained intact. As technicians worked to recover its contents, the families waited for the final piece of their daughter's story. Dawn broke over Claxton Forest, painting the autumn trees in gold and crimson. Michael Reed stood at the edge of a clearing where portable lights still illuminated the ongoing forensic work. He'd barely slept in the week since his discovery, driven by a growing conviction that there was still something missing, one final piece that would complete the puzzle. The video camera found at the cabin had revealed much, but Michael couldn't shake the feeling that the girls had documented more of their ordeal. During his years working with his father on the case, he'd learned that Emma Wilson had received a small handheld digital recorder for her birthday just weeks before the disappearance. It wasn't among the evidence recovered so far. If they were creating trail markers and leaving messages, he reasoned, Emma might have used her recorder too. Detective Winters was skeptical. "We've conducted an exhaustive search of both sites. If such a device existed, we would have found it." But Michael had inherited his father's stubborn persistence. That morning, while forensic teams focused on processing already discovered evidence, he requested permission to search a section of the forest they hadn't yet examined, the area between the last fabric marker and the fire road the girls had been trying to reach. "They were getting weaker," he explained to Winters. "They might have dropped or hidden things along the way that we haven't found." With reluctant approval, Michael began his search as storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Weather reports predicted heavy rain by afternoon. The first significant rainfall since the investigation began. If there was anything still to be found, the coming downpour might destroy it forever. He moved methodically through the forest, scanning the ground and lower branches, following the invisible line the dancers had been creating with their fabric markers. The terrain grew steeper, rockier, challenging even for an experienced woodsman, nearly impossible for exhausted children in ballet slippers. 3 hours into his search, the first raindrops began to fall, pattering against leaves and pine needles. Michael quickened his pace, frustration building as the precious window of opportunity narrowed. Then he saw it. Something unnatural among the rocks of a small stream bed. Water had carved a channel through the forest, creating a natural pathway that the girls might have followed. Near a flat stone that would have made a perfect resting place, a glint of metal caught his eye. The rain intensified as Michael knelt in the mud, carefully excavating what appeared to be a small metal box, its surface corroded but intact. The lid was sealed with ballet hairpins twisted together, an improvised lock created by desperate hands. Shielding his discovery from the increasing downpour, Michael radioed for assistance. "I found something buried by the eastern stream bed," he reported, voice tight with anticipation. "I need an evidence team immediately." As rain soaked through his jacket, Michael constructed a makeshift shelter over the site using his emergency poncho. He thought of his father, who had searched these woods countless weekends, always believing there were answers to be found. Had he passed this very spot, perhaps walking within feet of this crucial evidence? The forensic team arrived just as the storm reached full strength, the wind whipping through trees and thunder rolling across the sky. Under a hastily erected tent, technicians carefully documented and removed the metal box, preserving the delicate evidence of its burial and the ingenious pinlock mechanism. This wasn't just hidden, the lead technician noted. It was deliberately preserved, buried above the waterline, in a container that could withstand the elements. These girls understood what they were doing. Inside the command center, as rain lashed against the windows, technicians carefully opened the sealed box. Within, protected from 17 years of forest seasons, they found Emma Wilson's digital recorder, wrapped in a plastic recital program. Beside it lay 5 small tokens: Olivia's dance team pin, Sophia's rosary beads, Mia's lucky penny, Grace's friendship bracelet, and a lock of Emma's blonde hair tied with ribbon, keepsakes they had purposely preserved. The recorder's battery had long since died, but its memory remained intact. As technicians connected it to specialized equipment, the families gathered once more, drawn by the promise of hearing their daughters' voices one final time. The timestamp on the first recording is May 18, 2006, 3 days after the abduction, the technician reported. The last is dated May 21, just hours before. She didn't finish the sentence. Officer Foster, who had arrived despite his doctor's orders to rest, leaned forward in his wheelchair. "They recorded for 4 days," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "They were alive out there for 4 days, documenting everything." As the first audio file began to play, Emma Wilson's voice filled the room, tired but determined. A child speaking with the clarity of someone who understands their words might be their legacy. "This is Emma, Olivia, Sophia, Mia, and Grace. We escaped from Mr. Davis 3 days ago. We're lost, but we're trying to find our way home. If you're listening to this, we want you to know what really happened." The room fell silent as Emma's voice continued, small but steady through the recorder's speaker. "Today is May 18th. We've been in the forest for 3 days since we ran away from Mr. Davis's cabin. We're taking turns being leader. Right now it's Olivia's turn because she's the best at finding north using the sun." The recording captured the rustling of leaves, the distant calls of forest birds, and occasionally the hushed voices of the other girls in the background. "We're recording this so people will know what happened if—" Emma paused, her young voice carrying a weight no child should bear. "If we don't make it out, we want our parents to know we tried really hard." The family sat transfixed as the first recording played in full, 8 minutes of Emma describing their escape from the cabin, how they ran blindly into the night until they couldn't hear Davis crashing through the underbrush behind them, how they found the rock outcropping for shelter and decided to wait until daylight before trying to find their way out. The second recording began with Olivia's more methodical voice. This is Olivia Scott. It's morning now, May 19th. We slept huddled together for warmth. We're going to try to walk downhill today because Mr. Reed taught us in science class that downhill usually leads to water, and water usually leads to people. Her voice took on a teacher's tone as she explained their survival plan. We're using pieces of our costumes to mark our path so we don't walk in circles. Sophia's tutu is lavender, so that's our first marker. Then Mia's blue, then my magenta, then Emma's pink, then Grace's green. When we run out, we'll start over with lavender. The recording captured their determined optimism, their belief that rescue was coming. In the background, Grace could be heard singing softly to keep spirits up as they walked. With each recording, the mood shifted subtly. By May 20th, their voices sounded more tired, their words more measured as they conserved energy. We found berries today, Mia reported. Sophia knew which ones were safe because her grandma taught her. We're really thirsty, but it rained a little and we caught water in leaves. In the command center, Rebecca Johnson pressed her hand to her mouth, shoulders shaking as she listened to her daughter's fading voice. The most powerful recording came from Grace, the youngest and normally the most spirited. Her voice was thin but resolute. We promised we'd all get home together, and we're keeping that promise. Emma's ankle hurts, but we're taking turns helping her walk. We can see a valley from the high rocks, and we think there might be a road down there. We just have to keep going. In the background, someone coughed weakly. We're telling stories to stay awake, Grace continued. Stories about what we'll do when we get home. Olivia's going to hug her dog for a whole hour. Sophia wants her mom's enchiladas. Mia's going to sleep in her parents' bed like when she was little. Emma wants to sit on her porch swing and look at the stars without being afraid. Her voice cracked. I just want my dad to carry me up to bed again. There wasn't a dry eye in the command center now. Even Detective Winters had abandoned professional detachment, tears streaming silently down her face as she listened. The final recording, dated May 21st, featured all 5 girls, their voices taking turns in what was clearly a deliberate, planned message. Emma began, "If you find this, please tell our families we love them. Tell them we stayed together and took care of each other." Olivia, "Tell our teachers we used what they taught us, especially Mr. Reed's science lessons and Miss Garcia's first aid instructions." Sophia, "Tell our brothers and sisters we were thinking of them, and that we're sorry we won't be at their birthdays or graduations." Mia, "Tell our moms and dads it wasn't their fault. They couldn't have known about Mr. Davis. We don't blame them." Grace, "And tell everyone we weren't afraid at the end. We had each other." Together, their voices joined in one last message. We are the 5 dancers from Millfield, and we are brave. The recording ended with the soft sounds of 5 young girls singing their recital song, voices growing fainter as the recorder captured their final moments together. In the silence that followed, Michael turned to the parents. "There's more," he said quietly. "They didn't just record their voices." The technician nodded, connecting the device to a monitor. The recorder had video capability. They made several short clips. The screen flickered to life, showing 5 exhausted, dirty faces crowded together, trying to fit in the frame. Their recital makeup was long gone, replaced by smudges of dirt and scratches from branches. Their once perfect ballet buns had unraveled into tangled hair, but their eyes still held determination. "This is what we look like now," Emma narrated, the camera shaking in her unsteady hand. "We want you to see that we didn't give up." The video panned slowly across their makeshift camp. The rock outcropping where they'd sought shelter. The careful arrangement of stones for catching rainwater, the fabric markers laid out as they planned their next attempt to find help. "We're following the stream now," Olivia explained, pointing to the trickling water nearby. "We learned streams lead to rivers, and rivers lead to towns." The camera work was jerky, filmed by exhausted children, but it documented something remarkable: their systematic approach to survival. They had designated sleeping areas, a kitchen for the berries and plants they gathered, and a rudimentary sundial made of sticks to track time. The final video clip, time-stamped just hours before they succumbed to exhaustion and exposure, showed the 5 girls sitting in a circle. They had created a miniature stage using flat stones and placed upon it tiny dolls made from twigs and costume scraps, 5 ballet dancers in eternal performance. "This is so people will find us," Grace explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "Even if we don't make it, the dancers will stay." The video ended with a slow pan across their faces, each girl saying goodbye to their families in her own way. Not with words, but with brave smiles, with peace signs, with hands shaped into hearts. The screen went dark, but the image remained burned into the minds of everyone present. 5 children facing death with more courage than most adults could muster, creating meaning and beauty in their final hours. In the profound silence that followed, Detective Winters finally spoke. They nearly made it. The fire road they were trying to reach connects to a ranger station 6 miles east. If they'd had the strength to go just 3/4 of a mile further, if the search had extended just a little more in this direction, Officer Foster added, his voice breaking. The revelation that these children had been so close to rescue, had fought so hard, and come so near to salvation, was almost unbearable. Yet somehow, in their final recordings, the girls themselves had provided a framework for processing this tragedy. They had transformed their story from one of victimhood to one of extraordinary resilience. Julia Wilson stood slowly, her face wet with tears, but her posture straightening for perhaps the first time in 17 years. "I want to see where they were found," she said. "I want to see the path they made, the markers they left. I want to walk their final journey." One by one, the other parents stood as well. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the forest washed clean, sunlight filtering through wet leaves. Together, they followed Michael along the streambed, retracing the path 5 young dancers had marked with colorful scraps of tulle and ribbon. They passed the stones where the girls had rested, saw the places they had gathered berries, noticed the directional markers etched into tree bark. With each step, they came to know their daughters in a new way, not as victims, but as survivors, who had faced impossible odds with creativity, cooperation, and unwavering hope. When they reached the rock outcropping where the girls had spent their final hours, they found the miniature stage still intact, 5 twig dolls in faded fabric tutus, dancing forever in the forest that had claimed them. Rebecca Johnson knelt beside the tiny monument. "They built something beautiful," she whispered, "even at the end." "No," Julia Wilson corrected gently, "especially at the end." As sun broke fully through the clouds, casting dappled light on the little stage, the parents stood shoulder to shoulder, united in grief, but also in something unexpected, a deep, abiding pride in the extraordinary courage of 5 ordinary girls who had faced darkness together and filled it with light until their final moments. Spring arrived in Millfield the following year, bringing with it a sense of renewal that had been absent for nearly 2 decades. The town that had been defined by loss now embraced a new narrative, one of remembrance, resilience, and healing. On May 15th, 2024, exactly 18 years after the spring recital that had changed everything, Millfield Elementary unveiled a memorial garden where the gymnasium once stood. At its center stood 5 bronze ballet dancers in a circle, hands joined, faces turned upward, Each statue perfectly captured the spirit of the girl it represented. Emma's gentle smile, Olivia's thoughtful expression, Sophia's graceful posture, Mia's kind eyes, Grace's joyful exuberance. Around the statues, a pathway followed the exact pattern the girls had created with their fabric markers in the forest, a spiral leading inward, crafted from stones of pink, blue, lavender, magenta, and green. Plants native to Claxton Forest filled the spaces between, creating a living memorial to 5 dancers who had become unlikely symbols of courage. Julia Wilson, her hair now streaked with silver, stood before the gathering of families, former classmates, and community members who had come to mark the occasion. "For 17 years we existed in the limbo of not knowing," she said, her voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "We imagined the worst because imagination was all we had. But now we know the truth, and the truth, while painful, brings honor to our daughter's memory." She gestured to the bronze dancers as they had come to be known. These girls did not just disappear into darkness. They fought, they persevered, they cared for one another until the end. And they left us messages of love, not fear. The Millfield Dance Academy, newly established in the community center, had created a scholarship fund named after the 5 dancers. The first recipients, 5 young girls from different backgrounds, performed a special piece choreographed to honor the lost dancers, incorporating movements inspired by the brave actions documented in their recordings, reaching up for rainwater, marking paths, supporting each other. Michael Reed watched from the sidelines, his father beside him in a wheelchair. Officer Foster's health had improved somewhat in the months since the case was resolved, as though the weight of uncertainty had been physically lifting him down. "You finished what I started," Foster told his son, gripping his hand tightly. "You brought them home." After the ceremony, the 5 families walked together to the cemetery where their daughters were finally laid to rest side by side beneath a shared monument. No longer marked as missing, their headstones bore not just dates of birth and death, but the words they had spoken together in their final recording. "We are the 5 dancers from Millfield, and we are brave." As twilight descended, Julia Wilson lingered at the garden, watching fireflies begin to rise from the native grasses, tiny lights dancing in the gathering darkness. "They found their way home after all," she whispered, placing a small point shoe on the memorial path, "and they showed us how to find our way back too." The bronze dancers gleamed in the fading light, 5 figures forever joined in a circle of courage, their story complete at last. That's the end of the story. What would you have done if you were in Michael's position, searching those woods? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to hear more haunting mysteries like this one, hit subscribe. Click on our next video to discover another unforgettable story.